Boom! What is up, Familia? Dayspring here with an episode of Power of X-Men where we are going to discuss your hot takes again. It's so funny every single time I'm like, oh, let's do a hot takes episode and I'm going to post on stories. No one is ever going to reply. And you all do. Familia, you always show up because we all have such strong opinions about the X-Men, especially with Marvel Rivals. All the new legends that are coming in and we get to hold them in our hands. I mean, we just get all the fields. And of course, the comic books. That's where our love for the X-Men come from. I was talking about this the other day with someone. I was like, listen, I love the animated series. I love my Marvel Legends. I love my video games. I love video games so much. However, my love for the X-Men begins with the comic books. Ah, God, that first Rogue miniseries by Terry Dodson with like the art by Terry Dodson. That cover of her looking so strong, like Superman, but just Rogue. I never seen a comic book cover like that before. Oh, I love it so much. So let's dive into these questions. I'm going to try to keep this limited to about an hour, but Familia, you know the drill. You know how it goes here at Power of X-Men. Okay, let's go right here. And our first question, man, right out of the gate, Rogue and Gambit need a divorce. Ah! You're trying to get me in trouble here. Listen, I don't fuck around with the Romy stance. It's like MCU Wanda, right? Don't fuck with MCU Wanda stance. Don't fuck with Romy. Okay, here's my serious hot take on Rogue and Gambit and the relationship. First of all, I think Rogue and Gambit should always be end game. And we're not going to get into any of the Magneto of it. That is a conversation we can have another day, or we've had already. And I don't want to revisit it right now. But with Rogue and Gambit, here's the thing. When you say I want them to have a divorce, I want them to have a proper wedding. Because like the wedding that they had in X-Men Gold was so under the radar, was so last minute, right? It was kind of like a gimmick. Like Marvel was like, oh, Kitty and Colossus are getting married. Psych! And then Gambit's like, hey, Rogue, since everyone's here and all the festivities are happening, why don't we be the ones who get married? It was just so poorly done for such an iconic flagship couple. Now, the thing about that is, we're just speaking truth here. At the time, no one was really reading X-Men comics. I mean, the X-Men were going through a really rough period. And of course, when the Fox Disney deal happened and everything started getting a little better, you did start seeing the refocus on X-Men, and then we got Krakoa, and then we are where we're at today, which is a really great place. But, the wedding of Rogue and Gambit should have been a huge, monumental event that Marvel did. I mean, North Star and Kyle got a bigger celebration. You know what I mean? Scott and Jean have had a bigger celebration. So did the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, Mary Jane. I can go on and on about the list of Marvel characters who've been married. It almost feels like Rogue and Gambit didn't get anything. And yeah, they got their like Mr. and Mrs. X series afterwards, but like the actual wedding, unless you were reading that series closely, you missed it because it was like the last few pages of what would have been the Colossus and Kitty wedding. So you want them to get a divorce. I want them to get a proper wedding. So I only say, can we retcon that wedding and get them married again? And there you go. You're happy. I'm happy, right? They get divorced, but they get married again. But I really hated the Rogue and Gambit wedding in the comic books. I think it's such an insult to us, X-Men fans. Like Rogue and Gambit, if you were going to marry them, they were deserving of something bigger, and they didn't get it. So that's my hot take on that. The Stan Wars puts me off reading their solo series. So this is a reference to solo books and fans who are reading them and then are having arguments, I believe, on X. I'm not on X. I peruse X every so often, and I'll retweet or react, whatever the language is. And I go on my personal just to keep up with news and like fashion, but I'm not really on X. And I suspect that's where a lot of these STAN wars are happening versus on, Power of X-Men. Like we get a couple comments here and there, but for the most part, I think we have a very, diverse conversation happening in terms of, people liking the book, not liking the book, and the reasons why. So obviously, I'm in the loop on some of those Stan Wars, specifically when it comes to Storm and Jean. And the person who put this in said, I want those to be nameless. So I'm sorry. They're nameless, but didn't want to name like the actual solo series. Yeah, I don't know if it's off-putting as much as I think it's like I kind of like cock my head as to like why does that vitriol have to exist in the first place? It is a very minor subgroup of a subgroup, right? Because I think mostly a lot of people love Jean and Storm having a sisterly relationship and understand that there are different levels to the powers and stuff like that. And we don't need to get into it here, but do you see how I'm like tiptoeing across all of these like red buttonish? It is so hard to be an X-Men fan these days. There's so many landmines everywhere. You're like, what? It's no different than AOL keyword Marvel. I'm telling you, we've been doing this since 1995, folks. Let Grandpa Dayspring tell you about the bloodbath that was AOL keyword Marvel. You know what I mean? I think it is disappointing. It truly is, because Storm and Jean, there's no, they wouldn't compare their powers. They just hug each other. They wouldn't compare their stories. They have a sisterly relationship. So, I do find it kind of odd that people get so incredibly worked up if you have a difference of opinion. And certainly I've been there in the past, so I'm not one to point a finger, but I think some of the beauty of these online discourses and being able to chat with other fans is to see a perspective that you don't normally have. And again, as long as it doesn't come from malice, if you genuinely just have a different perspective, I always find it really great to listen to. So, Stan Wars is always going to be something that's out there. There's just sadly nothing we can do about it. I wish fandoms could just get along and there would be no scandal, but like every fandom has its drama. Every fandom sort of has its points of contention. This is nothing new. Since the dawn of the internet has this been going on. So, onwards. Okay. And here's another one that came in. Speaking, trying to keep things as nice as possible here. I hate 90s era X-Men. Really? That's fine. That's fine. Listen, I will tell you this, and I think I said this in my X-Men 97 review, which is my X-Men 97 season 2 trailer review breakdown. I'm ready for the X-Men to be out of the 90s. Like in the season 2 trailer, Bishop says, we got to get the X-Men back to the 90s. And you're like, oh, are they still in the 90s? I just think, and this was another like question or hot take, excuse me, that we had gotten in, which was, oh, I really want the 90s era's teams back. And I was like, I think that ship has sailed. And, I meant it not only just in terms of getting all those characters reunited and in those books, like the Gold Team, the Blue Team, X-Force, Excalibur, Generation X, etc. But the way we told stories in the 90s, it's very different. And that's something that's taken me a while to really fully understand. It's only been until recently that I'm like, oh yeah, we're never going to get that era of X-Men back. Like we've sort of moved on as a society, as a culture, that we don't really talk about stories or write stories or portray stories the way we did in the 90s. It's just the franchise, in specific the X-Men, very different in today's world than it was in yesteryear. So, I think X-Men 97 is the closest we're going to get with that. So, I hate 90s era X-Men. I mean, I don't hate 90s era X-Men, but I certainly understand that it's time to move the franchise forward. And yeah, I think we can't keep dwelling on nostalgia. And that's been my fear with the X-Men, is that the X-Men is more of a nostalgia IP at this point, and we're sort of forgetting everything that happened from Grant Morrison to right before the X-Men disassembled, right before Krakoa. It's like all of that storytelling, which was vast and deep, right? Like Messiah complex, AVX, everything sort of gets kind of like forgotten, and we're all talking about 90s X-Men over and over again. And I would just love for the franchise to get out of a nostalgia, twist, if that makes sense. But I love the 90s though. I love the 90s, and I miss that era quite a bit. Okay, Tom Brevoort is a hack. Yes. In Tom Brevoort's case, I have never liked Tom Brevoort in decades before I even started Power of X-Men. When he was on Formspring, and sort of how mean and vitriolic he was to fans who were asking questions, I didn't think that was fair. And my thing is, my sort of measurement here is, okay, where's this malice coming from? And trust me, I understand. I want to be. I'm going to play devil's advocate here, which is, you are the editor at Marvel, and you're doing, in this case right now, the X-Men, or in the past you've done Avengers, and you're getting so many questions over and over again, and people are sort of like coming at you, insulting you personally, physically, your work as an editor. I understand becoming snide. I understand becoming mean, but then don't open yourself up to that, right? Don't do a Formspring. Don't do a Substack. Don't have a Twitter. You know what I mean? Like, just bow your head and do your work. I just don't think insulting your readership, no matter how in the wrong the readership is, because I agree, the readership, I'm raising my hand here. I have in the past left some very, very mean comments back when I was 14 years old, and I really wanted a 90s Jean Grey figure. I get it. But I think you have to take the higher road when it's your job and you're representing a brand and a company. And you've been doing this for decades, right? I forgot, he's like the longest running editor. I'm forgetting that. I just think at a certain point, you've sort of know what you've gotten yourself into. Take a step back, ignore it. People will, in theory, still read books, but I think Tom Brevoort has done a good job at making us all feel like our readership doesn't matter. Marvel's going to Marvel. They're going to do whatever the heck they want. So I just don't think he's a nice guy. The X-Men need a hiatus like Fantastic Four had after Secret Wars. Make us miss them. I have said that. I don't know if this is someone who listens to the podcast. I'm not naming usernames here, but I don't know if you listen to the podcast, but I've said that before. I've said that in private conversation. Make us miss the X-Men. Absolutely. Give us a little break. I think there should have been a break after Krakoa, and just make us miss the X-Men. And like I said last episode, I believe, which is focus like on the ultimate X-Men, do this weird initiative for like a year of ultimate X-Men, whatever you want to do. I don't care. Tom Brevoort, you're not paying me to give you these ideas, but I really would have liked them to have just taken a break, let us wonder where the X-Men are, and pick up a year later with the mainstream 616 X-Men. You can still publish X-Men in an alternate universe kind of deal. But or you refocus on Avengers. I know that idea doesn't settle well with a lot of people, but the fact of the matter is Krakoa was this big genie that they shoved back into the bottle, and now everyone is kind of like, huh? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on? The stories are not very good. The direction is kind of like, I do like Age of Revelation. I have said that I think Age of Revelation is really good. You could have done a whole year of Age of Revelation. You know what I mean? Given all the tie-in books, but yeah, I think a hiatus would have been nice. It really would. It really would have been nice to have given like some space for the X-Men. The 616 X-Men to breathe a little bit and let us come back and sort of question the new status quo. Again, I think this is boiling down with what I'm trying to say, which is I think we need some bold swings in the comic book industry, right? Age of Apocalypse was a bold swing at the time. The New 52, right, in DC was a bold swing at the time. I think we need someone who loves the comic book industry to take a bold swing to see how you can get people excited, get readers back into comic book stores and picking up these comics, right? You have a lot working against you, right? The brick and mortar stores are closing. The prices of comic books, the switch to digital, there's a lot happening. So I think there needs to be someone who's very passionate about the industry, who sees sales figures, and how do you move that needle and keep readers engaged instead of insulting them on your Substack or Formspring. Not gonna let that Formspring go. You're like, what's Formspring? Kids, Wikipedia that. Okay. New Marvel Legends are shipping too early, 2 months ahead of schedule this time of the year is rude. Listen, I was thinking about this too as I sit on my desk and I see Feral, animated Logan, Beast, Rachel, Gladiator, Deathbird. I have well, they're not legends, but my Mafex figures on the way, and I'm like, damn, my credit card is gonna be insane, and I pre-ordered too much. The alternative, my friend, is when they weren't giving us any new legends, and we had the return of Marvel Legends, and since then we've sort of snowballed to where we're at today. My worry is not that they're coming too early. It's my worry is that they're oversaturating the market. This is quite literally too much of a good thing. And it's like when you're really hungry and it's Friday night and you want pizza and you're like, I'm going to order 3 pies, like 3 large pies, and you only eat like 4 of the first pie. You know what I mean? And like you have all this pizza left over. The legends are coming in too fast that I'm like, I don't know. I was actually thinking like, is something going on with Hasbro that they want to make sure fans get all these figures as fast as possible? I don't know. Listen, I don't have any tea on that. I have no tea on that. So that's just me purely speculating. But listen, I really wanted Rachel. I really wanted Deathbird. I really wanted Astonishing Beast, and I really wanted Feral. So the fact that they came sooner rather than later, I'm not going to complain. But yes, I mean, if this is more of a comment towards your wallet, I feel you. I feel you. I'm dual income, no kids, and even I'm like, oh man, this is expensive. But we don't get political on this podcast, but those tariffs are starting to kick in, and everything's getting more expensive. So I'd rather get these figures before any big prices happen. So that's sort of where I'm at with it, but I agree with you. And again, I lived through no Marvel Legends for like a year or two, and it was horrible, except for the face-off figures, which weren't bad, but the alternative is we don't get any. So I'll take this upswing. We are in a golden age of Marvel Legends, but like, I get you. I get you. Logan and Storm should be a canon thing and more recognized. One of my favorite parents. You know, I'm not a big Storm and Wolverine. That's kind of like for me, like Batman and Wonder Woman. It's a little too on the nose, like your two flagship characters, hooking up, having a relationship, whatever. I honestly don't mind like them, kind of secretly behind the scenes, like hooking up, right? Wasn't there apparently a subplot on Friends, the TV show, where they kind of like pitch, I believe it was Lisa Kudrow and Matt LeBlanc who wanted to pitch that Phoebe and Joey had been hooking up secretly over the years. And I was like, oh, I like that. Yeah, that makes sense. Similarly with Storm and I was going to say Cyclops. All right, let's take that from the top again. Storm and Wolverine hooking up here and there. Yeah, of course I believe that. Of course I believe that. I mean, doomsday scenarios alone, everyone's hot, right? You're gonna hook up with anyone. But listen, I think they're a sexy couple. I think they obviously have good chemistry on panel. So that's not where I'm going with this. It's just for me, it's a little too on the nose, and that's a preference of mine. But the beauty of having an X-Men ecosystem and community is turn it over to you guys. You guys have your conversations wherever you have your conversations, whether it's at cons or on message boards or Discord. I said message boards or Discords. I'm curious. Do you like Wolverine and Storm together? I miss Krakoa. Yeah. Yeah. I miss Krakoa. Just start all over again. It's getting bad. Yeah. Listen, we all miss Krakoa, and I was a big vocal advocate for them to relaunch the X-Men at the end of Fall of the House of X, just because the writing is bad. The writing was bad. I'm sorry. The writing was awful. From even Inferno was awful, and that was Hickman. I'm like, that was bad writing. Like, I mean, Trial of Magneto is shameful. That is a horrible story. And from there on out till the Fall of the House of X, the writing just didn't make sense. I mean, fine, Immortal X-Men, Immortal X-Men was fine. It wasn't poorly written, but that was one book out of like a sea of them. And I know a lot of people liked X-Men Red. So we can sit here and we can debate, but the overall health of the line was not was not particularly good, and I didn't want a reboot without Krakoa. Like, the new status quo is Krakoa, so you just relaunch, just like how you relaunch X-Men of different eras, right? This on the run X-Men from the Ashes is just not working. It doesn't make any sense. People are not interested, and Marvel just keeps doubling down. There has to be some other meetings on the back end, because either everyone out there is just being mean and secretly buying the books, or Marvel just has an initiative where they have to double down on and everything. I don't know how hard it is to course correct over a year later when things have just not been landing. Someone can explain it to me. I'm always happy to hear. I do not believe they're planning so far in advance that they can't course correct. Something we've seen behind the scenes here. I mean, no one cares about the X-Men books. I'm telling you. I mean, you may care. I care because we're comic book readers. But the general population out there, no one is reading the X-Men comics. I grew up with people who were reading. Everyone. I went to school. Everyone was reading the X-Men comics. Everyone had the Fleer Ultra. Everyone was watching the X-Men animated series, right? As an adult, people were reading Avengers versus X-Men. People up until a few years ago were reading House of X, Powers of 10, Krakoa, everything. I'm telling you, I have my ear to the ground on X-Men fandom and trends. No one is reading the comic books. Again, when I say no one, I don't mean literally no one. I mean the majority of the public. So I want the X-Men to be a household name. I want the comic books to be a household name. But perhaps that era is over. I've sort of been meditating. Like, maybe we just live in the era where these characters are known in the MCU. But even the MCU is not doing well. Even the MCU is not doing well, and we all want Doomsday to do well, but Doomsday is a Hail Mary, Familia. Make no mistake of it. Doomsday is a Hail Mary to try to get people excited. And if Doomsday fails, that's it. It's game over. And what I mean by fail, it needs to at least hit a billion. A Billy. We need a Billy there. And I'm sad that this, I always wanted kind of like the Infinity War, but make it the Mutant Saga. The Infinity War saga, I wanted it to be the Mutant Saga, and we'll see where things land. I don't know. I want to be optimistic. I know I'm not trying to be pessimistic here, but I think Marvel needs to sit down and really think about their strategy. And before, you wouldn't listen to your fan base, right, in the 90s, because oh, of course people are going to complain again. But in a world of streaming, us having our iPhones, of piracy online, you better listen to your fan base. If not, they will go somewhere else. I'm not saying make decisions based off of what the fans want, but at least try to make the general population excited to tell people, oh, you have to check out the story. That is just my point of view. The Astonishing Beast figure is one of the best recent releases. Agree. 100% agree. Our review is up on YouTube, so please check it out. I think second only to that retro card Beast, though, with the lab coat. That's how good the Astonishing Beast figure is. X-Tiles are headed straight for a new glut crash. They've learned nothing. They need to sell a certain amount of books monthly. That I understand the publishing model, so they need to publish X amount of books, but they're not doing good ones. That's the thing that's killing me. I don't know. Get a sample audience, Marvel. You're big enough where get some fans and make them sign NDAs and sit them down and tell them what you have coming up and make sure every book is good. Like Age of Apocalypse. The reason that crossover, we are still talking about it till this day, is because every single book in that crossover is good. And it wasn't so overwhelming, oh my God, Age of Revelation, I like. And again, these titles, the majority of these books are good. But we're talking these are like $5 almost a comic, and you're publishing how many of them? And I'm already paying for Marvel Unlimited. I have no incentive to buy these books as they happen, but to wait for them, you know? And I don't know what if there's a churn with the Marvel Unlimited app. I don't know what's going on there. But man, sit down, look at your numbers, see where the readers are, and I'm telling you, no one needs to like me. No one needs to like another X-Men podcaster. But if you're working at Marvel, listen to what they're saying. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what X-Men YouTubers are saying. Listen to what comments on X or Instagram, what those fans are saying. You have to listen to your fan base. I cannot stress that enough. The Phoenix series, I'm telling you this right now. I'm a diehard Jean Grey fan, as all of you know. I wanted a book of Jean in space, divorced from any of the mutant drama on Earth, right? Let Scott be with Emma. I can care less. I want Jean in the cosmos as Phoenix operating on a cosmic level. That is a book I've wanted my entire, well, I don't want to say my entire life, but since Endsong, since the end of Phoenix Endsong in 2005, that's 20 years I've wanted a book like that. And I thought it was the most boring book ever. I didn't want to read it. And it, again, there was a problem if me, and I'm not going to name any other names, but other major Jean Grey stands, if we found that book boring and completely uneventful, and I have said it just reads so flat, it's such a flat read, there's a problem. I'm sorry. We have dedicated our lives to being Jean Grey fans, and that can be as pathetic as it sounds, but Jean Grey is my passion, and I'm not going to just accept a poorly written book. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you cannot convince me that some writers are as passionate about the character as fans. And maybe that's in general the case, but at least not more knowledgeable. I think if you're writing something, you should be more knowledgeable than the fans on that, or at least see a different angle the fans haven't seen. Worried about Emma in the MCU and in the future. So many haters in the X Office and 97. Emma is not at all disliked. I promise on the 97 team. On editorial, we're seeing the new promo in January where Emma is front and center. So I wouldn't worry about it. I think Emma's going to have her moment to shine in season 3 of X-Men 97. I think that's where you're going to see some Emma goodness. But I don't think Emma's disliked at all. And in fact, Emma, for a long time, since the end of New X-Men all the way through to, let's say, X-Men Disassembled, even though I don't think she had a lot to do in X-Men Disassembled, she was very much front and center and flagship X-Man status. And similarly in Krakoa, I mean, she was elevated to ideological leader. I will always say that I think during the Krakoan era, you have 4 major philosophies leaders, and that was Magneto, Charles, Emma, and Moira. So, I don't think Emma's disliked. She may not be getting the attention she got during like the Astonishing era, and I agree with you. I think Emma's one of those characters you can not have her on B titles. And again, no shade to any of the titles she's in currently, but she needs to be in your flagship like X-Men book. She is exceptional, but she shouldn't be in Exceptional X-Men. She should be in Jed McKay's X-Men. She should be in Gail Simone's X-Men. Those are your 2 flagship characters, or excuse me, books. She should be there. So, but I don't think so. Emma is beloved. Trust. And we're getting a Marvel Legends Diamond Emma. Everything is good with Emma, but that does not negate the fact that she should be given better stories. I of course, will always agree with that. Classic Generation X doesn't get nearly enough love. Agreed. We had the reunion in Astonishing X-Men, right? But it's baffling to me that they haven't done a proper Generation X reunion. Like, and we got a Generation X Volume 2 back in the day. And it's so weird to say back in the day, but years ago. And it just didn't really live up to what Generation X was. I think you need Scott Lobdell to come back and sort of do that. But Generation X, I mean, I don't understand why no one on that team, on the editorial team, loves them the way so many of us readers do. And there's ways to write a story about that. You can make anything happen. It's a fictional universe, right? Just make it happen. Professor X hasn't been the same following Deadly Genesis. I will say, I think during the Danger arc, Danger arc is where I thought I'll pinpoint the exact moment where I was like, oh man, Xavier, what are they doing to him? Was when the astonishing team found out that the Danger Room came online and became Danger. And Xavier's excuse was, well, my teams needed to be trained. The world needed to be saved. So I just silenced Danger. And I was like, wow, that's like a really shitty thing to do to a sentient being. So, right, that's right before House of M, Deadly Genesis. So I'm going to take a roll back. I agree with you, but I'm going to say it started in Danger. That's where Xavier was pretty awful. It's pretty awful. Excited for Marvel took on X-Mansion stage, but worried it means less X-Men fighters. Tokon, however you pronounce it, the new fighting game that's sort of like Marvel versus Capcom, not the not Marvel Cosmic Invasion, but the other one that's coming out. I'm excited for that. I haven't been following the news too closely on that. Let's see where it goes. I hope they, with a lot of these like nostalgia things, I hope they realize what makes it special. Like Marvel Cosmic Invasion for me is A+. Everything I've seen, it comes out on my birthday, I believe. It's my birthday's December 3rd. I think it comes out the 4th or the 2nd, one of those. Listen, wherever you want to go with that, like I'm here for the ride. I love gonna take you for a ride. I love video games. I have an open heart to it. I played X-Men Destiny, okay? So the bar is pretty low for me. As long as I'm entertained and I order pizza and play video games and have my cherry fucking Coke, I'm usually good. I'm just glad to see Gambit more in the spotlight with 97, Deadpool and Wolverine, and now Marvel Rivals. Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that Gambit and Rogue, the fame we're seeing them get right now is largely because of X-Men 97. Lenore and AJ's voice acting work is phenomenal. The writing is phenomenal. Episode 5, remember it. I mean, come on. Like that put Rogue and Gambit back on the map because again, no one cared when they got married in X-Men Gold. All the conversations we're seeing today about Rogue and Gambit was not present back in like when did X-Men Gold happen? Like back in like 2018, 2017, whatever it was. Don't hit me if I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but no one cared for it. And Rogue and Gambit, man, I gotta tell you, X-Men Legacy, it was they were so well written. People enjoyed it, but the level of intensity of the fandom was not present. So I'm happy to see that intensity and that passion and Marvel Rivals, which everyone is playing. It's a household name at this point. Like my friends in Miami that I go to, my local bar, they're like, "Oh, we love Marvel Rivals," and they love playing it. So, Deadpool and Wolverine. I think media literacy is dead. I think Deadpool and Wolverine Gambit, people can get really like upset about it. It was supposed to be a parody, right? That's all it was supposed to be. Like, and people think it's like literal, and it's supposed to be like a parody because the Gambit Channing Tatum movie, would have been so bad, and the accent would have been all over the place. So, it was more of like a meta humor joke, but it landed, I think, because of that. And then I think people then misconstructed that it was just supposed to be a joke. And so that's my opinions on it. I love Channing Tatum's Gambit, like, again, as like sort of a fun, not like to be taken too seriously. And with 97, I agree. My God, 97, again, Familia, much like the Rogue and Gambit wedding, Gambit becoming Death was not a big thing in the comics. I mean, Peter Milligan just wrote it as sort of like a backstory, and then he became Death, and that's it. And he did not actually die. There was no real emotional crescendo. So I'm telling you, 97 has done so much good for the X-Men IP, specifically Rogue and Gambit. Okay, only Exodus and Nanny can save the X-Books. I have no problem saying that this came from Planet X-Men, one of my favorite accounts out there. I love CC so much. Go check out Planet X-Men. And I agree, Exodus and Nanny for the win. Only they can save the X-Books. Oh, And I truly love Planet X-Men. One of the first accounts I ever started following on Instagram. So great. Please go check out his page. Feral Wolverine is the best Wolverine. Obviously, I agree with that. I love Feral Wolverine so much. And, you know, I hope we get to see him in X-Men 97 season 2. Let's see what becomes at the end of it. But Feral Wolverine, just again, it's one of those things. It's an irrational love for the character. I understand having Wolverine as Wolverine, but something about that blue or red bandana, looking feral with the bone claws, the Joe Mad art. It's my favorite. I'm never gonna not love Feral Wolverine. Okay, let's see. Hating on Beast is the new hating on Cyclops. He's had the most interesting character development. um, no, I'm sorry. Only because Cyclops has you can trace Cyclops's story from the 12 all the way through IVX, right? And maybe even X-Men Disassembled, right? We'll give it X-Men Disassembled, where Scott was sort of this Boy Scout leader who became possessed by Apocalypse, started questioning everything, had like a low self-esteem. His marriage with Jean ended, and then he was with Emma. The mutants were on the brink of extinction, and he had to rise to the occasion to save the mutant species from extinction when Magneto and Xavier weren't really doing anything because they're ideologically driven. Cyclops had spent his entire life preparing for war, and now he was actually battling it. So I think there's a huge character growth for Cyclops. With Beast, I will say, in fairness, I think in New X-Men and Astonishing, you really do see that kind of Beast storyline, but it's not as developed as Cyclops. And I think once you get to the Bendis era, where he brings the O5 back, I mean, he does it incredibly irrationally with absolutely no, I say this from the writing editorial perspective, with no real reason to lie to these children and bring them back for a mutant genocide. It just didn't. It was just a flat out lie. And then he does another secondary mutation. And then, right, fast forward, we're on Krakoa and he's doing shady things. And then he's rebooted to an earlier version of himself. No. I do think saying that hating on him is like hating on Cyclops, because I think Cyclops got a lot of unnecessary hate because people weren't necessarily reading the comic books. And I think if you're reading the comic books, it's very clear Cyclops had like a really big overarching arc, where I think with Beast it's not as known. But that being said, though, I mean, it's fun to hate on Beast. I mean, again, it's we do it mostly as a joke, but there we go. I miss the 90s, the mansion, 5 teams, approximately 56, 50, 60 total X folks keep track of. I miss the simplicity. Yeah, as we've said, I think we're kind of done with the 90s. I don't think we're just ever going to get that level of storytelling back again. I hope one day we do. It really is one of those things that I wish the X-Men IP would evolve past the 90s, but still keep what made the 90s so special. And fingers crossed, maybe one day we'll get there again. Never say never is what someone kind of told me on DMs when I posted something like this. Similarly, we got a similar comment. And I agree, but it's been 30 plus years that we've been waiting. So we need an X-Men Legends remake / revival. Agreed. I don't know if we're ever going to see that again. Check out our interviews with the directors. We've interviewed the director for X-Men Legends 1 and X-Men Legends 2, as well as Marvel Ultimate Alliance. It boils down to rights and an IP, right? So maybe, you never know, but I would not bet on it. But I wish they could just re-release a game as is and we would play it. I don't know how the video game rights work for digital platforms, but if I was Marvel, if I were these video game companies and people are running these games on simulators out there, I would be like, well, nothing is something is better than nothing, right? So let's just re-release the game, and whoever wants to buy it buys it, and we'll take it from there. But yeah, as of right now, you can only get them on simulators. As X-Men fans, we are eating well. Agreed. Sadly, the source material that started it all is dying. Oh, that is the paradox we live in, right? Like, we are eating well. I mean, Wolverine and Deadpool, or sorry, Deadpool and Wolverine made $1 billion. X-Men 97 made the X-Men like IP, like it revitalized it very well. We're getting Marvel Legends, Rachel Summers, Deathbird, Astonishing Beast, Feral. I mean, we are eating well. Cosmic Invasion coming out in just a few weeks. Yeah, we are eating well. However, you're right. The source material that we love, the comic books, they're just not doing well. And it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. Emma Frost was terrible. Phoenix was terrible. All the comics right now are lost. Oh, yeah. I don't Emma as a Phoenix, I don't know how I feel about that. Right, she was a Phoenix twice. She was Phoenix in Phoenix Song, which I thought was critical to the plot of Phoenix Song, to show that even Emma as a Phoenix could not live up to sort of the sacredness that Scott and Jean experienced. But that's okay, because Emma is her own character. Right? Just to recap it really briefly for you guys who probably don't know, in Phoenix Song, right, which takes place after Jean's death in New X-Men, Emma and Scott are in bed, and Emma reads Cyclops' mind, and she finds out that Scott and Jean, during the events of Dark Phoenix, were intimate together in New Mexico, and she was able to hold back his optic blast telekinetically. And Emma's like, well, I could kind of do something similar, which is, in my diamond form, you can't hurt me. Right? And so she turns into diamond form and takes off Cyclops' glasses, and his optic blasts don't do anything to her. And they start kissing, making love. And he realizes that Emma in her diamond form is very cold. So when the Phoenix returns, resurrects Jean, the Phoenix eventually leaves Jean and goes into Emma. Emma, as a Phoenix, realizes she can't control it. And so one of the things she does is take off Cyclops' glasses and is able to be with Cyclops as Phoenix. But it doesn't work. Like, she can't control the Phoenix, and she has to like burst out of like the containment, the Phoenix egg containment that they have. And she realizes that the Phoenix is too powerful for her, it's too hungry, and they have to kill her. In the end, Emma is not trying to be Jean anymore. In fact, she wants to heal Jean. And so she goes, Jean, how does it feel to be loved so much? And she pulls together every X-Men across the globe to show Jean how much she's loved. And Jean is able to unite with the Phoenix. Beautiful. Sorry for ranting on it, but that is a beautiful plot. So in that regard, no. I mean, I think the entire point was to show that she was a bad Phoenix. That Emma could not be Phoenix. She could not be Jean, but she's something else for Scott. That is so beautifully mastered. You don't get stories like this anymore. You do not get stories like that anymore. Your other point would probably be the Phoenix 5, which, listen, Phoenix 5, Emma, with Namor, with Colossus, with Magic and Cyclops, it's just fun. That's all it is. It's just fun. The Phoenix corrupted her, and Cyclops steals her piece in the end. So, I would take that as just like a fun blockbuster, right? You're not going to compare like a blockbuster movie. I don't know why. Armageddon. You're not going to compare Armageddon to like an Academy Award, to like Moonlight, right? I don't know why these are the two movies I'm thinking of. But right, like, you're not going to compare Moonlight and Armageddon, right? Like, Armageddon is a turn off your brain blockbuster, film meant to get claps, while Moonlight is more of a serious examination of a character and a situation. So, that's the only thing I would say about Phoenix 5 and Phoenix 5 Emma. And listen, it took me a long time to get there. Rant over. Sorry. Dan Stevens as Legion deserves to be in the MCU. Yes, agreed. And it's so funny. A lot of people say I look like Dan Stevens, which I'll take that compliment. I always take a compliment. But I'm surprised that we haven't had more respect for the Legion series, given how much. Same with The Gifted and Legion. They deserve a lot more TLC than they've gotten. How are we on time? Okay. Ooh, this one. It's so funny. A dear friend, one of my best friends, just submitted this statement, and he knows I don't like it when I get these like really mean, heated comments because sometimes I'm like, because so mean, and every time I look, it's always him. But I love him very much. Morrison's overrated and underhated. Disagree. Oh, I disagree so much because the reason why I disagree is because, again, for the time, Morrison put the X-Men back on the map and was a springboard for all of the comics that we got. I will say I want to say up until AVX. I would say up until AVX. Morrison to AVX, there is a beginning, middle, and end story there. You can look at it. It's there. We're happy to break it down, but Morrison was very crucial for the X-Men books. Now, that does not absolve you from wanting to hate it. Of course, I mean there are books out there that people like that I'm like, oh god, that's terrible. But if it's landing with people, there is some kind of value to it, and as long as it helps the X-Men grow, that's all I care about. And Morrison, I haven't looked at the sales numbers in a while, but we're talking Morrison was shipping over 100,000 copies a month, which is unheard of in today's world, even with digital. So I disagree. I know you said that purposely, best friend, just to get a rise out of me, and you got it. You got it. But I think Morrison is a very intelligent, well-written, well-paced saga. And obviously, we're covering it here on the podcast with Flink, which we will return to those episodes as soon as my auction season dies down. It's really, it's been an intense couple weeks, and Flink is also really busy too with work. He works at Heritage, so they need to scrap X-Men and come back in a couple of years like they did with the Fantastic Four. This is a comment that so many people are submitting. Yeah, I agree. We need the X-Men, the 616 X-Men, to take a break. You can focus on Age of Revelation. You can focus on all. By the way, you have the recipes here. You're doing X-Men of Apocalypse, right? Which is a revisitation of the Age of Apocalypse. And you have Age of Revelations. So instead of trying to cram so much into 1 year, why don't you just pace it out steadily and give the 616 X-Men a break for us to really miss the books. Now, the only thing I will say is, of course, when, the hype for the Fantastic Four coming back, we were all really excited for it because they had disappeared at the end of Secret Wars. And so years later, when they returned, I still remember that scene where Reed and Sue, we only see their silhouettes, and Johnny and Ben are like, they're gone, they're so gone, and then they see the big four in the sky, and Ben and Johnny are like so happy because Reed and Sue were sending them a sign. I don't know. Again, it was fun. It built a lot of hype. I don't know how that worked in terms of the overall health of the Fantastic Four IP, but as someone who is a diehard X-Men fan, we do need to give the X-Men, 616 X-Men, just a quick little break again. Jim Lee should draw an X-Men title again. So we covered this extensively like a year and a half ago, which was the big talk at San Diego Comic-Con like 2 summers ago, was that Jim Lee's contract at DC was up for negotiation. So in this little pocket window, Marvel was trying to get Jim Lee back on the comic books. Rob Liefeld outlined all of this in his podcast, and it's an industry-specific conversation. So I'm not in the industry. I comment on the industry, but the industry was all like, oh, is Jim Lee going back to the X-Men because they were doing From the Ashes? And originally he was going to be drawing the books, but ultimately he passed and opted to renew his contract with DC. Rob Liefeld speculates the reason why is because it takes a lot to draw these monthly comics. He's talked about how like you miss soccer games, you're up late, the kids are outside in the pool having a great time and you're inside drawing, right? So I understand that, and if you're going to be the head of DC. You know, why would you give that up? Just go back to Marvel to draw comics. That's what has been put out there. You can disagree with that. I'm not in a position to know better. I'm just going based off of the comments, the scoops I've gotten, and Rob Liefeld's episode where he outlines all of that. So, you know, he should draw an X-Men book again. I believe they've wanted him to draw an X-Men comic book again. I think From the Ashes, Rob Liefeld was supposed to be doing the Cable book. Jim Lee was supposed to come back and draw the X-Men, and Rick Remender was asked to write an X-Men book. So that's what From the Ashes was originally supposed to look like. Okay. Monet should have her own title to finally sort out her family drama. Yeah, this is what I thought the X-Men Legends title back in the day, I keep saying back in the day, a couple years ago during the Krakoan era would have been, which is you resolve a lot of these like big plot holes, and it didn't. It turned out to be the most boring, like with the exception of the Adam X, Cyclops, and Havoc story. X-Men Legends turned out to be such a dud. I mean, that's what happens when you don't have people who really know outstanding X-Men issues. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be that crass in saying it, but, you know, don't bill a book at like all the plot holes of X-Men are going to be answered in this comic book. And then it was the most innate things that people did not care about. So yeah, there is family drama with Monet. Don't forget Emplate. Emplate's in there too. And they just gloss over it. No one really cares to resolve it. I wish they left the Fox characters alone and out of the MCU. Agreed. I know that's like a really big hot take here, and I'm not trying to be salty because I think a lot of us are excited to see Rebecca Romijn back. I was going to say Stamos. Rebecca Romijn back as Mystique and give her a proper opportunity to look more comics accurate. Although the reptilian look, we all love the reptilian look, and perhaps Famke and Holly finally truly be the most realized versions of their characters. I know they're just rumored, but I'm just saying James Marsden, who is confirmed to be back, give him a chance to really be Cyclops. Of course, we all want that. But the thing about Secret Wars and Doomsday is, again, Familia, it's a Hail Mary. They're hoping nostalgia will get you in the theaters to like this movie. You're going because you want to see James Marsden as Cyclops. You want to see Alan Cummings return as Nightcrawler, right? The Russo brothers are directing it. It's all great. It worked. Trust me, it worked for me. However, a Hail Mary is a last-ditch effort. It's not a strategic plan, and that's what I always thought the MCU was, strategic planning. And it's been very clear after Endgame, they have no plan. They're just throwing things at the wall, hoping it would stick. And you know what happened with Krakoa? Krakoa, you read those comics, Dawn of X, and they're throwing plot after plot to the wall, and they're not following through with any of it. The multiverse saga, we can all agree was just not that good. But man, had they just utilized the lore that they themselves establish and connect, we can connect the dots. I say this all the time. We as fans can connect the dots. However, it's not my job to connect the dots. It's Marvel's job to connect the dots. And they have not connected the dots at all in the multiverse saga. And again, it's been so long at this point. My God, this multiverse saga has been drawn out. Like, I don't know what the fuck goes on in Marvel that they just keep, doubling down on bad ideas. Like, one would assume they're purposely trying to tank the franchise. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me, because what you established in WandaVision and in Loki season 2 carries through in Doctor Strange and in Spider-Man, right? And then you carry that over to, whatever other projects you have. They did not connect. WandaVision does not connect at all to even Doctor Strange, right? With the exception of just like, Westview. Like, basically, they ignored everything that happened. How hard is it to get Sam Raimi and the creators of WandaVision on a Zoom together as these projects are being done? And Elizabeth Olsen has gone out there and said it. So, that she was here like, oh, yeah, people working on Doctor Strange didn't know what was going on with Wanda. And she didn't even know she was going to be a villain until the week before she started filming. So they've fucked it all up. And again, I don't mind the nostalgia bait. I'll take the nostalgia bait, but man, we did not work out in Doctor Strange 2 is all I'm going to say. And I'm okay. I think, bringing back the Fox X-Men for a movie, but is it even going to be the Fox X-Men we know? Because the Wolverine in Deadpool Wolverine isn't even truly the Fox Wolverine, because as established, he died in Logan and he remained dead. He remained the skeleton as established in the movie. So I don't know. It's confusing. People are not going to understand the nuances of it. People are just going to go for nostalgia. But is that going to contribute to once the nostalgia glaze wears off? Does that mean we're gonna have a plan afterwards? I don't know. I worry that we're still gonna be at the same place. Sigh, sigh, sigh. Storm and Cyclops lead the X-Men period. So this is a reference speaking that MCU, Cyclops and Jean will be leading the X-Men. And listen, I try to make it a point not to post rumors that aren't verified, right? So there's a rumor out there that says Scott and Jean are going to be leading the X-Men in the MCU. I didn't do any research on this. I sort of just put it out there. It's just a rumor, but a lot of these rumors, you can trace them back to a no-name source with no verification behind it, right? Like when they were saying Simone Ashley was going to be at the end of the Marvels and she was going to be Jean Grey, and they quoted a Variety piece, and I was like, well, let's Google this Variety piece that they said it, and no such writer existed at Variety, no such article. A lot of this stuff is just flat out made up. So, all I can say is it was just a rumor out there. It was just meant to put out there to entertain, for us to muse about. Doesn't matter the day of the week. It ends with Y, right? Like there's always gonna be an X-Men rumor out there. So, okay, here's a fun one. Iceman isn't gay. Ooh. So listen, let's just be objective here, right? I'm gonna dignify the other side of this argument, which is you're saying that Iceman isn't an LGBTQIA plus character, and I don't see the counter argument for that. And Iceman has long been speculated to have been in the closet. I mean, this is years, but decades before he would even come out. And some of those examples include when Iceman was with Jean at the Borders, Barnes and Noble, whatever bookstore from the 90s. And Gina's like, oh, Bobby, thank you so much for coming out with me to shop. And, not many men like to go shopping. And Iceman's like, well, Gene, I'm not like other guys. I mean, you're a telepath, right? And Jean sips her coffee. She goes, Bobby, I have no idea what you're talking about. I would never read your mind. I mean, it's kind of funny with what happens later, but there's strong implications there. Similarly, during the Uncanny Chuck Austin era, he was written as sort of in the closet, North Star having a crush on him. Lorna even says that she never slept with Bobby, that he's not a person you sleep with. He's just someone you endure. Very mean, Lorna. So shady. So, I think when you look at his history, especially in the 80s when he was dating Cloud, there was a lot of implications there. And what Bendis did during the '05 era, bringing the past X-Men to the present, Teen Jean is just like, hey, Bobby. She pulls him aside and she says, hey, Bobby, I think you keep making these remarks about women, right? Because he was saying something about magic, being like, hey, you're a hot teacher. And Jean was like, why do you keep doing that? Because Bobby, you're gay. And obviously that was a source of contention with fans, and we don't need to dissect that scene. However, there is a story there. This isn't just so left field that Bendis woke up one day and was like, let me make this character LGBTQIA plus. No, there were seeds planted for decades for Bobby being in the closet. And obviously another example of that was when Rogue and Bobby went on a road trip and they saw Bobby's parents there. So, a lot of those issues, it was really implied that Rogue and I'm sorry to use this term, but I'm just using the air quotes here, air quote, she was a beard for Bobby when they went to go visit his parents. So I just, I'm trying to see where another argument could be for something like, well, they just made Iceman gay, and it's not true. They didn't. There was a lot of thought, there was a lot of seeds planted over the decades, and Bendis, however you agree with the execution or not, Bendis sort of brought that story into fruition because we are living in an era right now that things don't need to be implied anymore, right? Just like with Destiny and Mystique, it was implied they were air quote best friends, and now it's like no, the way we tell stories in the 70s and 80s was very different than how we tell stories today. We don't need to be coy. We don't need to be subtle about anything, right? And that is the beauty of how we evolve as a society. So, having Mystique and Destiny be no longer best friends, but yes, confirm that they are a couple. Similarly with Bobby, we don't have to imply anything anymore. He is a gay man. Is sort of, where I would say that's why the stories are finally realized, are finally fully realized. So I don't know. I disagree with you. I don't. Bobby is gay, and it's always been present in the book. So to say he isn't gay, I think it's kind of negating decades worth of comics history just because you personally don't like that. And that, I don't know. That kind of like makes me a little angry, but we won't get angry about that. Again, if you listen to the podcast and you have a counterpoint to that, I'm happy to hear it. Please submit it to Paul at Power of X-Men. But I think it's pretty rude to say that Bobby isn't gay, and I think that's a comment motivated more by malice and not genuine looking at the comics. That's just my opinion. Okay. We'll do a few more, and then we're going to be good. We need an R-rated family drama X-Men movie with Mystique holding baby. Oh, wait, I guess that didn't really happen because it was retcon. I see. I hate that retcon. I hate the retcon where Mystique has secretly loved Nightcrawler this entire time. Listen, Irene and Mystique conceiving baby Nightcrawler, that's great. I love that. I love that very much. However, I still want Mystique to be a terrible mother holding baby baby Nightcrawler over a waterfall and ready to throw him off like that. Mystique should be a despicable character. And even that moment of throwing her baby over a waterfall, that should be a moment too far for her, right? She should be upset about that because that's a horrific thing, but that is where character development comes to play. So yes, give us a really hard R X-Men family drama, if that's what you meant. I don't know how, in general on the surface though, an R-rated family drama, I mean, you can do a PG-13. I don't know what you mean by R-rated, but Okay. I'm over Wolverine. There's just so many better X-Men. Why is he always the face? Okay, this is another point that I sort of feel this comic comes from malice and not genuine understanding of the X-Men IP. Wolverine is the face because he's the one that the majority, and I'm not talking about us like die hard, read the comic books weekly, collect every single action figure fandom, but I'm just saying like the general mass audience, right? Your general audience, they like Wolverine. And I'm going to give credit to Marvel for this because when you look at the Marvel Legends, you don't need to buy the Wolverine figure to complete the Build-A-Figure anymore. Like Wolverine's usually on his own. His solo series doesn't necessarily lead into any of the other books. He's not leading any or on all the teams as he once was. So, you don't need to like Wolverine, of course, but I think it's a little unfair to be like, I'm so over him. Why is he always the face? He's always the face because, as we just saw last summer or 2 summers ago, Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine made over $1 billion at the box office. And unfortunately, Marvel is in the business of making money, and they have to make money in order for us to get other better characters, right? Like a Wolverine action figure needs to sell, so we have money for Rachel, for Deathbird. Sadly, the passion for other characters isn't there with mass audiences, and that's fine. That's why you have your fan favorite characters, right? Wolverine needs to sell in order to give rise to other characters. just how it works. But again, I want to give credit to Marvel because Marvel has been really great at being like, okay, Wolverine is in his own comic right here. You know, you don't need to buy his comic to understand what's happening in the other comics. And again, I think what Hasbro does, packing him separately from a Build-A-Figure, I think that's pretty great. I really do. I think that deserves some respect from Hasbro. And I'm glad that they do things like that. Okay, let's see. I'm going to answer two more. Two more. Okay, I want to see who else will be revealed before the year comes to a close for the Marvel Legends line. You know, we do have rumored lists, and we take pride in vetting our leaked rumored lists. So go check it out on YouTube or our Instagram page. We sort of break all of those down. You know, recently with Diamond Emma on the packaging up on like the corner, the letterbox, we saw Onslaught, Sam Guthrie, and Cypher. Also on our rumored list is a holiday winter Spider-Man figure. So, you know, let's see who officially gets revealed, who doesn't. It's a guessing game up until the reveals, and that is the beauty of being a Marvel Legends collector. And we're going to end with Rufy O'Connor, aka Mike in LA, who is one of my favorite people ever. Before we did book club, every time during lockdown, he would get on an extra 20 minutes early and we would drink together so we could calm my nerves. Because I was like, oh, I've never really led book clubs before. I'm so nervous. And Mike took a moment all the time to make sure that I was okay, and he would drink with me, and I love him so much. He saw Spider Palm. We used to drink together out in LA. It's my LA trips now are so quick and fast, and I don't get a chance to see all the people I want to see, and I miss him so much, and he is one of my favorite humans ever. But he goes, I'm only reading Jed McKay's X-Men. I'm not getting burned again by buying the whole line anymore. And yeah, I mean, if you're seeing a common denominator here with the books, or excuse me, with the comments coming in about the books, not people are not happy with the X titles. They are not happy with the X titles, and that's again, Tom Brevoort, stop writing a Substack and start doing focus groups. Slide into the DMs of some of the people you engage with, Tom Brevoort, and say, hey, what do you like? What don't you like about the X books? Sign this NDA. I want to hit some stuff off of you. I want to bounce some ideas off of you. Not necessarily going to happen, but I want to get an overall temperature. What works? What doesn't work? What do you see? We really want to make sure that the X-Men survive as a comic. Comics are our passion. We're Marvel Comics. We love comic books. There's a problem when someone like Mike is not buying all of the X books. There's a problem when I'm not buying all of the X books. There are other people. Again, we were Wednesday warriors. I want to drive that point home. We were Wednesday warriors. My ritual was to go to the comic book store every Wednesday, pick up the trades I wanted, pick up my action figures, pick up the issues I wanted. I do read digitally. I want to be very clear about that, but still go to the local comic book store and buy the trades, buy the action figures, and then go to, for me, it was Subway, order my footlong chicken teriyaki, 2 macadamia nut cookies, and a Dr. Pepper, and sit down and read the weekly comics on an hour and a half, and just enjoy it. Sadly, there is no motivation. Again, Age of Revelations is good. Age of Revelation is good. That is a difference. I'm starting that. But again, at this point, I've been conditioned to wait for it to hit unlimited. It's a good story, but it's an alt-world story when you're telling more alt-world stories in X-Men of Apocalypse, right? Plus, we're already being told there's a new crossover coming. And that was another comment that came on that I'm going to tag on. Secret last comment, where there's crossover after crossover, and there's no time for these books to breathe anymore, these stories to breathe, right? Remember, like, we did Dark Web and Sins of Sinister. Back to, like, they actually crossed over in terms of the publishing schedule. Same with Age of Revelation and X-Men of Apocalypse, and perhaps that reads better on trade, right? Because we're a trade society now, or Marvel Unlimited. But like, man,
you're not creating the hype with the core audience that would be going there every single week to the comic book store. And the comic book stores are the ones who suffer. The hype isn't there with your core fan base. Like Marvel, wrangle it in. I wish I wish Marvel would just take a beat and be like, you know what? We've been so concerned with profit, and profit is important. Profit is important. I want to be very clear about that. However, you need to produce quality so you can get bigger and better profits. So maybe on the short run, you pace yourself a certain way. So that way, long term, you start getting good stories that are written, right? Like imagine you write a really good story. Let's say I'm using Age of Apocalypse as an example, just using it as an example. You write Age of Apocalypse and it's so well paced out. It's the focus of the X-Men books. Your core audience is excited for it. Years later, you get action figures based off of the Age of Apocalypse. Then you get a cartoon, event that's Age of Apocalypse. Then you get a video game that's Age of Apocalypse. Then you revisit the Age of Apocalypse in the comics as an anniversary event. And then you do a movie of and everyone's excited every step of the way, right? You get a live action movie of the Age of Apocalypse. Like, come on, guys. Like, think long-term health. Are people really gonna want an Age of Revelation if you're not getting them excited right now? Like, think about it. Like, you really do have to focus on the long-term health of the IP. That's my freaking sermon right there, Familia. You're welcome to disagree with me on anything. This is an open conversation. You can slide into our DMs at Power of X-Men. You can, I think this will be on YouTube, so you can hit that subscribe button. This is also on the podcast. You can leave a review if you want. You can leave a comment on Power of X-Men on any post that is related to anything we're discussing. Go to a Comic-Con, discuss it with your friends. Go to your favorite X-Men Discord. Go to, I was going to say message board. Go to your favorite X-Men podcast or whoever. Just have these conversations, Familia, and we will see you later.